Did you know the average person spends 147 minutes daily on social media? Whether you're trying to make your first sale or you've been open for business for a while, it's good to find more ways to market your business on social media. Social media has given businesses and brands a platform to engage with customers. Instead of just nurturing relationships with current clients, you can use them to find and convert significant leads. Listen in as Timothy Hughes discusses the benefits of social selling for businesses on the Dominate Your Market podcast. Think about how social media can greatly improve your company's effectiveness and give you a competitive advantage.
Welcome to the Dominate Your Market podcast, where we interview leaders, CEOs, founders, and high-impact business development professionals to get their insights on how you can grow your business efficiently, build an amazing company, and still have a life. Today's guest is Tim Hughes, who's the co-founder and CEO of DLA Ignite and the co-author of the best-selling books, Social Selling, Techniques to Influence Buyers and Change Makers, and the second one, which I love the title, by the way, Smarketing, How to Achieve Competitive Advantage Through Blended Sales and Marketing. We will talk about that. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be here. I'm really excited. I'm really flattered to be invited on here. Thank you.
No, it's great to have you on. You're on the other side of the pond, which again, we have another international guest. Yes. So
you can tell by my accent that I'm not from.
No. I thought you were American. Yeah. No. But your books intrigued me when I came across you on LinkedIn. You know, there's lots of salespeople. We know that, right? And there's lots of marketers in my genre. But when I saw the titles of your books, I was like, okay, you got me. You got me interested. And so I thought I'd have you on, and I'm looking forward to dropping lots of bombs for our listeners. Most of our listeners are CEOs of small to mid-sized businesses, so kind of keep that in mind. And but before we get going, anybody that doesn't know you, give us a background on where you came from and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a salesperson, and I've been in sales now for 25 years. My background is working in high tech. I used to work for a very large US software company, so understand the way that business works in the US and across Europe. I had a number of pan-European roles. And back in probably about 2014, I started getting bored with selling accounting systems. And I was kind of looking for something new. And my manager said, you need to get into this social media that, this is, where everybody's moving in this way. And I put it off for 6 months. Then I set myself up on Twitter and started to enjoy it. And then things sort of like went on from there. So in 2015, I met the person who was the co-author of my first book, Matt Reynolds. And we had a cup of coffee in London, and he basically had developed some software. And he said, what should I do? I said, well, no one will understand it. You need to write a book. And he said, will you do it with me? And I said, yeah, happy to do that, thinking I'd never hear anything again. He said, well, I've written 5 already, so I know people at Kogan Page. I'll ring them up. So within 3 months, I had a book deal. And it was like, you write it in, we wrote it, it came out in 2016. And that was the first one, the white cover, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Change Makers, which has been a bestseller. I mean, wow. It's sold and it's sold and it's sold. And of course, during COVID, the sales went up. So even though it was written in 2016, people were still buying it. But the feedback was, it's starting to feel a bit old, and I agree with it. So Kogan Page contacted me and said, will you do a second edition? So the second edition has come out. And that came out at the end of, beginning in November in the UK and the end of the November 2022 for the US. So I'm heavily in promotion mode with that.
Yeah. Well,
does that give you some idea of where I've come from? And,
yeah, I love it. Love it. Well, and I will say, I do like the yellow cover book, because I don't know if you see that one right over there, but there's another yellow cover book right there.
Yeah, we thought it's a nice pattern interrupt, in terms of you're scrolling through social media and you're going boring. What's that?
Right.
And they pitched it to me, and I said, yeah, we'll do it.
Well, what's interesting is my favorite color of all time, and anybody who knows me knows this, is orange. Of all time, it's energetic. It's just, since I was a little boy, and then I went to, you probably don't know a lot of the universities in the US, but I went to Oregon State University, which is the Beavers, and their colors are orange and black. Go figure. So the book, I tested out orange and black. I tested out orange background, and then all of a sudden my designer showed me this yellow one. And I've never, ever liked yellow. I've never used yellow in anything in my life. But that book, the cover jumped out at me. I was like, whoa, look. And then the bold, my bold lettering. It just, it's for any of the listeners out there, Dominate Your Markets, my book. And it's almost the same kind of yellow as Tim's, but mine's maybe a little bit brighter. But I love it. The yellow book, let's go, let's go. So I want to ask you about your sort of, and I sent you a message earlier today, and thank God you responded the right way. Your accolades, right? Like top this or top that. Talk about that a little, because very impressive. So talk about that. And I just tried to get a screenshot of it, and I thought I screenshotted it, but talk about some of those accolades that you've had, top social seller, things like that, because I think our listeners, I want them to hear sort of kind of where you're coming from with your background. Okay,
so the accolades that I have are all measured based on social media influence. So what you'll see out there is lots of lists, and lots of lists out there are quite often mates put lists together, or they're affiliate marketers, so they're all associated with a particular company. These are all based, my accolades are based on actual influence. So I'm the #1 social selling person in the world based on influence, and have been since 2016. And I can run you reports on Brand 24 to show you things like that. It's interesting because my company, one of the things that we do in my company is we help people transform, and we get them active and be active on social and digital. And one of the things that we show them is actually the top people who are in digital selling. Because of the top, I think 15, I think we have 11 of the places. And so this is actual influence. Brand 24 also came to me quite recently and said I was the 16th most person in the world based on influence to do with marketing. Now, I'm not a marketer. Or I know a lot about marketing, but I have no marketing qualifications. I've only dealt with marketing as part of certainly my role now as CEO of DLA Ignite. These are accolades. Now, the measurement of this quite often takes place on multiple social media platforms. Okay. So, for example, I'm not wedded to a particular platform, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter. The key skill that the business leaders need today, so talking to your audience, is to be able to walk digital corridors and have digital conversations. So this is not about, learning LinkedIn is important, but what we do is we teach people how to be social, how to be digital. And what we do is in the third module we teach people a little bit about Twitter. And what happens is you get an aha moment, which is we go, this is what you did in the first 2 modules. All you're going to do is take that and put it onto Twitter. You're basically, so it doesn't matter it doesn't matter whether it's Instagram, TikTok, whatever. It's just about being social. And therefore, what we do is that we show people how to use social and use it as a way to generate pipeline and to generate revenue. That's always been the fundamental point about my books, about the company. This is about increasing revenue. So generally, through social selling program, our methodology, you'll increase your revenues by 30% and you'll reduce your sales cycles by 40%. Now that's using our stuff. I don't know about anybody else's, but that's using us. And what we've done with is social is make sure that people see it as a structure and as a methodology. And we do that throughout the books and throughout the way that we work, which is and then what we do is that we teach people that. So when people come and see us, what we're going to do is teach them how we work. So we don't have something else over here that we teach you. What you do is you learn what we're doing, and that is part of the methodology that we transferred out of our various heads and put into the process.
Interesting. One thing I want to talk about real quick is you brought it up a couple of times, Twitter. So Twitter, obviously, I must bought it, and a lot of people are on Twitter. So I joined, being a marketer, I joined all the social platforms very early, very, very early, right? And I got my name, Mike Peterson, on almost all the platforms. That's how early I joined, which is cool. But so Twitter, I've got 11,000 followers on Twitter, right? And they are real. They are real. They're not bot, nothing like that. But I'm not consistent on Twitter, but I want to, maybe I'll even selfishly pick your brain a little tiny bit, but open up the mind of the listeners as well. So you say Twitter. So for me, I look at it and I'll do a post and I'll hashtag and all of that. Zero, nothing. No, not one like, 11,000 followers. Now I am not consistent on Twitter, the platform. I don't sell, but I might promote a podcast.
Yep.
Or I might promote maybe an article I wrote on my website, something like that. So tell me how you feel, especially Elon Musk recently buying them. How do you feel about Twitter? And let's talk about our listeners, CEOs. How do you feel about Twitter with a CEO of a smaller mid-sized business?
Well, I think really what people need to look at is digital relevance. What we're seeing at the moment, I mean, if you look at the way that most people sell and market today, it's all based on what we did in 1980. It's based on interruption. So I phone you up, I interrupt you and I pitch. I send you an email, I interrupt you and I pitch. I place an advert, I interrupt you and I pitch.
Boy, that's so true.
And what you'll find is that if you're actually listen to your heart, is we're all pissed off with it. We've had enough. And all people use social for at the moment is to basically do what they've been doing since 1980.
I would agree.
Which is in effect cold calling on a social network, which is they'll either connect and then pitch, or their pitch as they're connecting. It's spam. It's not social selling. And so what we have to learn to do is actually understand what being digital means and the relevance to that. And a lot of that is harking back to understanding that social media is social media, which means being social on media. So the mistake that people make often with social media is that they do this. We come to social media and we do what we did in all of the other channels, which is come and say, buy my product because we're great. And of course, everybody says that.
Yeah.
So the moment, and you got to remember, remember the feeling that you get when you get cold called or you get spammed or whatever.
Horrible.
It's a fight or flight. It's what happens inside us. It's a fight or flight. And so what happens as soon as we see that on social media, we just scroll past it. So what we're looking for, and actually the data bears this out, is we're not looking for brochures and brochureware and people telling us how great they are, because we know that they're going to say that. And if we want that, we'll go to a person's website. Now, HubSpot says that the average person goes to a website for between 2 to 4 minutes. The reason for that is that we know what a website's going to look like. We know it's going to say how great you are. We're not interested in that. We're just checking to see that you have a pulse. Maybe you have an office somewhere, and we can see that. And that's what the 2 to 4 minutes is about. We're doing that. We're doing that in ourselves when we're actually on social media. So the combination of all that is that we're not. It's an old cliche, which is don't sell. What we want is actually someone to help us. We want insights. Now, this doesn't sell. Actually, a lot of people go, this slows the sales process down. It doesn't. It actually speeds it up. So there's a lot of people who are saying, no, what we need to do is spam the world. We need to spam with, we need to hold a BDRs to spam out emails. We need to be making calls. You are basically destroying sales and destroying your company. That's not the way that the world works anymore. The world has, so what you're doing as a business is working in the physical analog world by sending out emails, by making calls. The problem is your buyers have all transferred to the digital world. So, most of there was some report recently that from IDC and SAP that said that 67% of buyers basically spend the 60% of the buying process on digital. So if you want to find modern buyers, stop being in the physical analog world and move to the digital world. And being digital and playing by the digital rules, which is not to spam people. The thing that the trick here on social is the word social, which is about having conversations. So what you sell, what I sell, and probably what the listeners sell requires us to have a conversation. So what we need to be doing is going to social media, and having conversations. So again, a mistake that people make, they think social media is what we're going to do is we're going to post content and we're going to post a tweet. And what we're going to do is everyone's going to go, isn't that amazing? They're not. What we need to do is that we need to be posting to generate conversations, because conversations create sales. So this, billions are being spent on employee advocacy tools or employee advocacy programs, which is about spamming out content, mainly brochures and brochuresware, that no one's going to read. And the problem is it doesn't generate conversations. So we do this introduction to social media presentation to people. And we always give this particular example, which is where one of my team took his son to the beach. Now, you will have seen pictures like this on LinkedIn, where it was during COVID, it was his son's 16th birthday, and they went to the beach and he took some photos and put them up on social media. The difference is that a lot of people will post those photos and then they'll disappear and they'll be counting maybe how many likes or comments they got.
Likes, yep.
Yeah, but what we have is behind it is a methodology that allows you to harvest those likes and comments. So when Eric posted that picture of him and his son on Austin, he got 184 leads. He got 6 C-level meetings. He got 2 proposals and 1 purchase order, and it took him 10 minutes to do. Now, the point being is that if you're not doing this, you're losing out. And then we get comments from clients saying, why isn't everybody else doing this? This is like free money. Because the difference is if you go to social media and go, buy my product because we're great, you're just the same as everybody else. You're just noise. We've all gone through our LinkedIn and gone, boring. That's interesting. Like you came and saw my book. And I'm sitting here. And this is the difference. There's a famous quote on the film Spinal Tap, which is there's a thin line between clever and stupid. And what we have is this whole industry thinking that it's about the tool, LinkedIn trainers, that it's that somehow it's about posting content. It's not. That somehow that this takes a long time. It doesn't. You and I have never met before today. You found my stuff. You said, that looks interesting. Would you like to come on my podcast? And we're sitting here. I've sat in front of CEOs where they say, I don't believe this social saying. And I say, so how do you think I got this meeting? And they go, ooh.
Isn't that funny how you do that? Like, just how do you think who we're talking right now? That, it's interesting because, and I had this discussion with a podcast guest 2 days ago, and it wasn't about, I've done so many podcast interviews, they all crisscross around, but it got to the point of CEOs not seeing the value of being active on social, right? And I could say all my clients give me a lot of pushback, like, I don't have the time, I'm not going to get in there and do it. But these are CEOs, right? And so I want to ask you this question. So they're running their companies, right? And the clients that I work with, $5 to $20 million companies, smaller companies, 10, 50 employees, something like that, right? But they're still running their companies. And they're like, post on LinkedIn. Why would I do that? So what would you say to those CEOs? And what tips would you give them in the sense, should it be them creating a mini personal brand for their company on their own LinkedIn, or should they have somebody doing it for them, whether it's on their team, employee on site, or God forbid, all these LinkedIn ghostwriters out there now?
I get asked this a lot, and unfortunately, the answer is if you don't understand why you need to post on LinkedIn, you don't understand business today. I'm sorry, but you need to get your fingers out and do something about it. So in my third book, I've got the CEO of Cyberhawk, which is a drones company, small business, and they have the whole of the C-suite on social media, and they're all posting. Why? Because they need to be digitally relevant. Yes. We've agreed that the buyer today, so the modern buyer, the modern job hunter, the modern investor, are all on digital.
Yes, I agree.
So your employees, your prospects, your customers, your future employees, your investors, and your future investors are all on social media, and it's not relevant. You don't think that you need to be relevant for them? Of course you do. So Cyberhawk, Chris Fleming, and it's in my social selling book. Chris writes a piece about why it's so important to be on social, and it's important because they're going to IPO faster at a higher rate because they're active on social media. The only way that they've been able to double the number of employees in their business is by being on social media. It has a direct effect in terms of the revenues that they're creating. Now, when you look at them as an organization, and this includes the CFO and the CIO, what it looks like are people that you could do business with. It's not human. It's human. It's not a bunch of CVs. I've looked at CEOs, and it's like, you're looking for a job. The way that you've written it looks like a company you could do business with, and they have got into. So they do drones on pylons and oil rigs, and they have got into companies they could never get into.
Crazy.
Purely because they've been able to. They look like a business you could do business, and people have walked towards them. So Namos Consulting, which is a small business who's an Oracle reseller, we've trained them as well. Chris Mason, the CEO, tells a story about how what we've done is that we train people and do three things. One is to get people a buyer-centric profile, so they look good on profile, not a personal brand. It's about looking good for your buyers, so people go, that's intriguing, that's interesting. The second thing is about having a network, and wide as varied network. And the third thing is having content, because we know that buyers are looking for that content. So we've now got a sales team at Namos that have all of those three things. So what happens is that people actually go, I think that person can help me, and they walk towards them. And then there was a conversation that took place between the buyer and the salesperson, just like any other conversation that you would have. And what that translated in is into a $2.6 million deal. And they've subsequently taken another $500,000 out of them. Now, are our CEOs saying they don't want $2.6 million deals, or they don't want to double their, So we've got another client, which is a company in Cambridge, and they've actually stopped spending money on recruitment ads and recruitment consultants, which is a big spend. Why? Because they're active on social, and people are walking towards them, the modern job hunter, and saying, I like what you actually are putting out there. I'd like to work for you. Yeah. And so what they've done is that they've changed the way. So this isn't just about sales. This is about this is about using social strategically and transforming your organization in sales, in procurement, in HR. And it's about using social and the modern buyer and the modern job hunter to actually go, that's the place I want to work, or that's the company that I'd like to buy from. And this is transformational. People walking towards you for a job, or people walking towards you and saying, I want to buy stuff. This is how transformational it is. And this is why CEOs need to be up. Now, I'm going to tell you this. There's Chris Fleming from Cyberhawk did this 2 years ago. He transformed his business 2 years ago. That means that if your business is not is not on digital, and your C-suite are not on digital, and you're still arguing about whether you should be on digital or not, you're 2 years behind. And if your competition get in front of you, you're toast.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting is, you know, I've got a development team that we've built over 500 business websites, right, in the last 15, 20 years. So, and I would like to say that I'm pretty highly knowledgeable about website usability, conversions, all of that, right? How to build a website to convert. But one of the biggest issues I tell CEO clients is I'll get on their website and they're nowhere to be found on the website, even on the about page, right? So this kind of dovetails right into social. And so
it does. I've been doing some prospecting today, and I've been on a number of websites, and I usually go on the website to find their LinkedIn page. It also gives you a view if they're how social is. So social, and there's people that, and you can't even, they're not even on, they don't even have their LinkedIn page on their website.
Well, it's interesting because I'll do a screen share, and I've done this hundreds of times with CEOs. And I'll pull up their website, you know, and most of the time the websites are terrible anyways, right? They're not written for the consumer. They're not written for solution oriented, all the above. But I'll say to the CEO, I'll go, do you know the second most visited page on a business website is the about page, right? Statistically. And they'll say, I didn't know that. And I said, okay, well, let's go to your about page. And they're watching me do it, right? Boom, go to the about page. They're nowhere to be found. Really, nothing's on the about page. I said, so I just let you know, it's the second most visited web page on a business website. You're not on it. Your team isn't on it. Really, nothing's on this page. And they go dead quiet on me, right? Well, so here's the dovetail to that. The dovetail to that is, I call it hiding behind your website. As a business leader, you're hiding behind the website. Well, then take that to social. So now let's take that off the website and put it right onto social media platforms. They're nowhere to be found. They're not active. And they'll say things like, well, I've got a LinkedIn, and I do another screen share. Here we go again, right? Boom, pull it up. And they've got no banner image. They got an old, terrible profile picture. I said, this thing looks 20 years old. It doesn't look like you're even in business right now. And they're like, wow, I haven't seen this thing in 10, or not 10, but I haven't seen this thing in 3 or 4 years. And so now the narrative with them is way different. It's let's get a good
it's a business, it's business critical to be active on social media. I'm not going to say LinkedIn, because it's important that you're walking the digital corridors and having digital conversations.
Well, and when you said you're not going to talk specifically about LinkedIn, in marketing, we always say be where your ideal customer hangs out, right? And so, and that's common sense, right? I mean,
yeah, fish where the fish are. So, and they're all on digital. So why are you still using all these analog and physical things? I don't understand it.
Well, and I'll tell you another thing too to add to this. This is very fascinating to me, but I think they'll enjoy the conversation we're having. So when you think of the digital part, even, it's so interesting to me that if people aren't on digital, I feel like in sales, it's like the opposite of what it used to be. So everybody hardcore cold calls, does all this outreach, right? Cold outreach. Now we want them to go to the digital side. But in most sales situations, I've seen it firsthand, there is still a human component that even when you get them to digital, you want to get off digital, have a Zoom call, have a regular phone call to close the deal. Because most deals, in my humble opinion,
it's the conversation.
You're not going to close it on you're not going to close it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I don't understand. But you know, it's you use social media to get a conversation, and it's the conversation that drives sales. And yeah, I totally agree. And that's what you should be doing. You connect in a way which is buyer-centric. So not here's my product, buy my product because we're great. Right. What you're trying to do is get a conversation where you ultimately, what you're trying to do is get them off social and have a proper conversation. Conversations drive sales.
Well, well, you just said it again too. Conversations drive sales. That's critical because I think a lot of people, even these young hustler, I call them kids because you and I are older. These young, they'll get on, they'll get
25. I had a difficult paper round.
So they will get on social and just hammer the pitches, right? And they'll go 100 a day. They'll get software that's blowing it up. They'll do all this stuff. And then, the question is, how's that working for you? Whoa, well, oh, we're getting five appointments a day. Well, how are those appointments turning out, right? Because they're just doing this blanket, automated stuff that's not really, it's not effective.
We had Brent Adamson on one of our podcasts the other week. Brent is one of the co-authors of the Challenger Sale. And he said that there's a lot of IT companies now that believe that they're at the cutting edge of selling. And he said that he believes that they're actually selling like it was 10 years ago. Having all of these SDRs basically pumping out emails, pumping out emails, pumping out calls, all of those things is, and for me, it's actually, I think it's 40 years old. Yeah. I mean, I cold called in the 1980s because that's what you did. But things have moved on, and we've agreed, and the data shows that the buyer has moved on to digital. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm really bored with all the cold outreach, and I suspect the buyers are. And if you look at it, if you look at the data, email marketing has a 98% failure rate. Cold calling, so that's a figure from HubSpot. A figure from Salesforce shows that cold calling has anything between a 98 and a 99% failure rate. And so anybody who's going now to the board and actually saying, so this year's our strategy is cold calling and email. And they go, okay, what's the likelihood that we're going to do our number? Well, it's a 98% failure rate on both cases. It's career suicide. I mean, now, maybe a tool. I know someone who, and it's only one person. They said that they were able to get a 98% failure rate to 96% failure rate by spamming people. Now, all they were able to do was spam their network, which is actually quite small. So gradually what they were doing was pissing people off, and at some point there's an end to your network. But he seemed to be really happy with getting a 96% failure rate. We're getting ROIs of 10,000 to 1. We're transforming organizations. We're getting $2.6 million deals, like I talked about earlier on. Why? Because we're doing what people want, which is to be social on media, and by driving conversations, just like we're having today. And that's fundamentally different from what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, well, I love when you say being social on media. I mean, that's a great way, a very simplistic way of letting people know, listen, it's like having a coffee conversation, right? Over coffee. It's very casual. There's no pressure. It's so interesting to me, the social media, because I've been on it forever, right? And I've been the aggressive guy. I've never been the pitcher guy, because I know better not to do that. But I've been the guy. My personality is aggressive anyways. The book, if somebody reads it, is like, whoa, shit, it's pretty intense, right? It's like there's vibrations in that book. But with that being said, being social on media, that if people can take anything from this podcast, that right there, be social on media, be on the platforms where it's more relevant for your ideal market, right? But I want to take a little move over now to Smarketing. So I'm personally a sales and marketing guy. Marketing more than sales, but you have to sell when you're in marketing. You have to do them both, right? So talk about Smarketing, not so much, we'll give you a chance at the end of the podcast to promote your book. So we don't want to talk about promoting the book right now, but talk about Smarketing for a minute. I love that. I love the idea of, because I think businesses moving forward in 2023, you better get sales and marketing working together for sure.
Yeah, so it's that, which is that I think it was back in 2018. I think it came out in 2018, which is so there's three authors of it. So there's my business partner Adam Gray and a friend of mine, Hugo Witcher. And we were talking about, there's this conversation that sales and marketing should come together. And someone came up with the term Smarketing. Dan Tyre at HubSpot claims he came up with the term, which is about bringing sales and marketing together. I think if we wrote the book today, we would call it RevOps and revenue operations, because again, that has a term about bringing sales and marketing together. And really what we did with the book is that we took, it's actually based on a case study, though we can't say what company it is. Though if you look up me and Hugo, you can see where we used to work. We had a situation where we had sales and marketing and they were at war with each other, throwing rocks over email. It just wasn't working. And over 18 months, we basically brought the two bits together. They're not under one person. They still are separate organizations. And we went, and in the book, we go through about why you should do that, like having a common language, what is a lead? Because, you sit in meetings and you always get the MQLs are rubbish and all of that. So how can we get that common language? How can we work together? How can we be running things that do things that actually work, and not do it to tick boxes or because it's someone's got an objective to run it. And then we've got a chapter on why things can go wrong, and the political things that go wrong. And we've got a chapter on how to measure it and things like that. So, it's kind of everything that we think that anybody who wants to bring those organizations together, it's a kind of a workbook to know about all those things, and the good things and the bad things.
So what can it, from this podcast, to drop some value, what can a CEO do? He listens to the podcast, he hears terms like Smarketing, sales and marketing, he goes back to his team. What can they do like immediately to just to almost like shift their mindset, right? To get it to where, number one, I would be like, I'm getting both groups in a room, right?
Yes.
Like, really? I mean, because common sense says everybody needs to be communicating on the same page. And like you said, same messaging, everything needs to be cohesive together. And I think in most companies, it's not. It's broken.
We had a situation where we had marketing with its own set of objectives, strategy, going off and doing something. Sales with its own set of objectives, own set of territories, going off and doing something else. And we had what would now be called a BDR team, so a cold calling team in Dublin, which basically was measured completely differently and had a different set of territories.
3 different things.
So you've got 3 different things with 3 different types of territories. And you'd get, at the beginning of the financial year, you'd go to the people in Dublin and say, this is how we're organized this year. And you go, oh, that's really interesting, but we're organized differently. So the idea, and this is really the idea now, if people are watching this, they need to go out and search for the term RevOps or revenue operations, which is about having one single revenue generating strategy, and under that having a number of objectives and measures and governance. And so you can have, and that, if you're thinking about the world of IT and SaaS, that's actually a complete life cycle, which is you'll probably have marketing, you'll probably have sales, you'll probably have customer service, you'll probably have renewals, all actually have an impact into the revenue up into that organization. And it's about making sure that there's a single strategy. Now, this is not about a takeover of marketing by sales or sales by marketing. There is a term which is a chief revenue officer, which currently quite often tends to be a sales leader, but actually in a true RevOps form, it would be somebody that is would own the strategy for the piece, and you'd actually have a different sales lead and a different marketing lead. And that's kind of what we're saying in the book. And again, it's about having the measures, the governance, looking at the sales cycle, if we haven't got enough pipeline this quarter, what we're going to do next, and making sure that everybody's talking to each other, and there's a connection between the two. Because if there isn't enough pipeline, okay, how are we, all the resources, going to sort that? and have that conversation across the organization rather than necessarily just throw it over the wall to marketing and say, sort that, it's not enough pipeline. Go and do it. How can we all work together to do it?
Well, and I think a lot of times you've got sales pointing fingers at marketing, marketing pointing fingers at sales. And then the CEO is like, well, I mean, it's out of control. It's completely out of control. Yeah. And that's very common. And it's like,
very common.
How can, so CEOs listening, so the takeaways from this podcast, which I'm so glad I had you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And I hope everybody buys your books. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to go buy them. I don't have them. I'm buying them right after the podcast. So
I'm going to go and buy them as well.
Well, and you should go buy mine. You should go buy mine.
Yeah.
Dominate your market. But so the two things. So we've got social selling, and the CEOs really need to embrace that, because you said a couple of key phrases, which everybody is on digital. Why would you not be on social if everybody's on digital? So all the CEOs and leaders that are listening to this podcast, go to your LinkedIn, go to your Twitter. If you don't have one, create the dang thing, and then go model people like you. Go to your Twitter, go to people in their industry that maybe have a Twitter account and go, oh, that's how you do it, right? And don't ever plagiarize anybody, but that would give them an idea of how they could at least set up their Twitter profile, how they could set up their LinkedIn profile. So if anybody can take anything away from this podcast, social selling, get on those platforms, create some thought leadership on those platforms, right? And then
I discuss it in the book. If they want to know how to do all that, it's in here.
There you go. Okay, and then so Smarketing, same thing. Sales and marketing have to work together. Going into 2023, all the leaders out there, come on now. This is not a war. This is not a battle.
We're on the same side.
Oh my God, everybody's working for the same company. So let's support each other, collaborate together, and you'll have a successful company. So between social selling and Smarketing, this podcast was amazing. So thank you very much. I do appreciate that. So now if people want to get a hold of you and find out about your books, give us some website addresses, give us any contact information you feel comfortable giving.
Okay. So my third book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers, which is the second edition with the nice yellow cover. Okay. You can get that on Amazon worldwide, and Smarketing, How to Achieve Competitive Advantage Through Blended Sales and Marketing, again, is on Amazon worldwide. And to find me, I'm Timothy or Tim Hughes on LinkedIn. So they probably should better find me. I'm Timothy_Hughes on Twitter. And our website is dlaignite.com.
dlaignite.com.
DLA Ignite. So Delta, Lima, Alpha, Ignite.
Okay, perfect. And I will go to my Twitter and follow you. So you'll see a quick follow in a second. Yeah, well, and I'm going to probably get in my Twitter and just play around a little bit and just see, because I have 11,000 followers. I mean, it's not like I've got a small Twitter account.
No, it's 11,000 followers is a platform, but you need to be consistent.
Yeah, for sure.
The thing with Twitter is it's a very fast flowing social network. So a tweet lasts, I think people say about 15-20 minutes.
Whoa, wow.
So whereas, if you post something on LinkedIn, it kind of lasts all day. With Twitter, it is very much this fire hose of stuff basically going by. So you do need to be
crazy. Wow.
You do need to be consistent. And it's one of the things that we teach people in this. We do, as I say, a 30-minute part of our overall social selling and influence course. We do a part on Twitter, partly because they can understand what it means to be social rather than just thinking it's all about LinkedIn, but it's also about understanding some of the mechanics of Twitter.
This has been amazing, Tim. Thank you so much. And just a pleasure having somebody, another very well-known person across the pond on my podcast. Love that. Love it. And thank you so much, Tim. I do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You've just listened to the Dominate Your Market podcast with CEO, business consultant, and author, Michael Peterson. Growth-minded CEOs hire Michael to explode their revenues, build an amazing company, and create a transformational mindset that encapsulates growth, success, and ultimately happiness. His book, Dominate Your Market, is creating quite a stir in the marketplace. Go to dominateyourmarketbook.com and get your first chapter free.